Captain Lee Dae-ho stood on the bridge of the Harmony and watched the biggest space station he had ever seen grow larger on the screen. Nexus Prime looked like a metal city floating in space. Millions of lights twinkled across its surface. Ships from dozens of different worlds moved around it like busy insects. "Sir, we're getting a message from Station Control," said Lieutenant Kim Tae-wook from his position at the communications desk. "Put it through," Lee Dae-ho replied. A strange voice filled the bridge. It sounded like it came from underwater. "Human vessel Harmony, you are cleared to dock at Bay 47. Follow the guide lights. Do not deviate from the assigned path. Dr. Park." So-min looked up from her tablet. She had been studying alien languages for months to prepare for this moment. "They sound very formal," she said quietly. Engineer Choi Hae-jin checked her instruments. "Everything looks normal, Captain. Their docking system is similar to ours." Lee Dae-ho nodded. This was it. After 150 years of wondering if humans were alone in the universe, they were about to meet hundreds of alien species all at once. Earth had received the invitation to join the Galactic Confederation 6 months ago. Now they were here to see if humanity deserved a place among the stars. The docking process took 30 minutes. When it was finished, Lee Dae-ho gathered his team in the main corridor. "Remember, we represent all of humanity today. Be polite, be respectful, but don't let anyone push us around." The airlock door opened with a soft hiss. Cool air flowed in, carrying strange smells, something like flowers mixed with metal. 3 aliens waited for them on the other side. The first alien was tall and thin, with blue skin and 4 arms. The second looked like a walking tree made of crystal. The third was small and covered in what looked like golden fur. "Welcome to Nexus Prime," said the blue-skinned alien. Its voice was the same underwater sound they had heard on the radio. "I am Coordinator Voss. This is Delegate Krint and Assistant Pip." Lee Dae-ho stepped forward. "I am Captain Lee Dae-ho, of Earth. This is Dr. Park So-min, Lieutenant Kim Tae-wook, and Engineer Choi Hae-jin. We are honored to be here." Coordinator Voss looked at them with large, dark eyes. "Yes, humans. We have heard about your species. Very young, very emotional." Dr. Park So-min felt her face get warm, but she stayed quiet. "Please follow us," Voss continued. "We will show you to your quarters first. Then you will meet with the council." As they walked through the station, the humans tried not to stare. The corridors were huge, built to fit aliens of many different sizes. Some aliens floated instead of walking. Others had too many legs to count. A few glowed with their own light. But what caught Kim Tae-wook's attention were the small, furry beings cleaning the floors and walls. They looked almost like the lemurs he had seen in Earth's old nature videos. But they walked on 2 legs and had hands like humans. Their fur was gray and soft-looking. Their eyes were large and intelligent. "What species are those?" he asked, pointing to one of the furry cleaners. "Those are Kef," Voss said without looking. "They handle maintenance, work. Very good with their hands." One of the Kef looked up at Kim Tae-wook as they passed. For just a moment their eyes met. Kim Tae-wook saw something there that made his chest tight. The Kef looked sad. More than sad, hopeless. The human quarters were comfortable but plain. After settling in, the team was taken to meet the Galactic Council. The meeting room was enormous, with seats for hundreds of different aliens. Most of the seats were full. Supreme Coordinator Vex stood at the center. He was large and intimidating, with thick armor-like skin and small, cold eyes. "Humans of Earth," he announced. "You seek to join our confederation. This alliance has kept peace in the galaxy for 3,000 years. Lee Dae-ho stood up. "We are grateful for this opportunity. Earth wishes to contribute to galactic peace and cooperation." Several aliens in the audience made sounds that might have been laughter. "Contribute?" Vex said. "What could such a young species contribute? You have barely left your own solar system. You fight wars over patches of dirt on one small planet." Choi Hye-jin felt anger rise in her chest, but Lee Dae-ho remained calm. "We may be young, but we learn quickly. We believe all species have something valuable to offer." "Perhaps," Vex said. "We shall see." For now, you may observe our proceedings, learn how a proper civilization operates. The humans spent the next few hours watching the council make decisions. Most of the talk was about trade routes and resource allocation. The humans noticed that only certain species seemed to speak. Others just sat quietly, even when decisions clearly affected them. During a break, Dr. Park So-min walked over to get some water from a dispenser. A chef was there, refilling containers for the council members. Up close, she could see that the chef's fur was clean and well-groomed, but his clothes were simple and worn. "Hello," she said softly. The chef looked around nervously, then whispered back, "Hello, tall one. My name is So-min. What's your name?" The chef's eyes widened with surprise. You want to know my name?" "Of course. I am called Wisp," he said quietly. "But I should not talk to council observers. I could get in trouble." "Why would you get in trouble for talking?" Wisp looked confused by the question. Because I am Kef. We serve. We do not speak with important beings." So-min felt something cold settle in her stomach. "But you're intelligent. You can think and talk just like anyone else." "Yes, but..." Wisp struggled to find words. "That is just how things are, how they have always been." Before So-min could respond, Coordinator Voss appeared beside them. "Dr. Park, please return to your seat. Wisp, back to work." Wisp quickly lowered his head and hurried away. Voss watched So-min with those dark, unreadable eyes. "Humans are very curious," he said, "but some curiosity is not helpful." That evening, the human team ate dinner in the station's main dining hall. The food was strange but edible. Around them, dozens of alien species sat at tables talking and eating together. But the humans noticed that the Kef only served food. They never sat down to eat. "This doesn't feel right," Kim Tae-wook said quietly. "What do you mean?" Lee Dae-ho asked. "The Kef. They're obviously intelligent, but they're treated like servants." Choi Hee-jin nodded. "I saw one fixing a broken display panel today. He solved the problem faster than the alien supervisor could explain what was wrong." "Maybe it's just their culture," So-min said, but she didn't sound convinced. Their conversation was interrupted when a loud crash came from across the dining hall. A tall, lizard-like alien had knocked over a tray of food. The Kef, who had been carrying it, was on the floor trying to clean up the mess. "Clumsy creature," the lizard alien shouted. He raised his hand and struck the Kef across the face. Kim Tae-wook was moving before he realized it. He crossed the dining hall in seconds and grabbed the lizard alien's wrist before he could hit the Kef again. "That's enough," Kim Tae-wook said firmly. The entire dining hall went quiet. Hundreds of alien eyes turned to stare at them. The lizard alien pulled his arm free and hissed, "How dare you interfere? This is not your concern, human." "Someone being hurt is always my concern," Kim Tae-wook replied. He helped the Kef to his feet. The small being's face was red where he had been struck. "Thank you," the Kef whispered. More aliens began to gather around them. Their voices rose in angry discussion. Several of them seemed upset with Kim Tae-wook, not the alien who had done the hitting. Coordinator Voss pushed through the crowd. "What is the meaning of this disturbance?" "The human attacked me," the lizard alien declared. "I stopped him from hitting someone who couldn't defend himself." "Kim," Tae-wook said. Voss looked back and forth between them. "Lieutenant Kim, you have interfered with internal species relations. This is a serious violation of diplomatic protocol." "Protocol?" Kim Tae-wook couldn't believe what he was hearing. "Someone was being hurt. The Kef are not your responsibility," Voss said coldly. "They are under Vorthan protection. Delegate Seth has the right to discipline his assigned workers as he sees fit." Lee Dae-ho arrived with the rest of his team. He could see that the situation was getting worse by the second. "We apologize for any misunderstanding," he said carefully. "Misunderstanding," Seth the Vorthan hissed. "Your subordinate assaulted me." "He was protecting someone weaker from being hurt," So-min said, stepping forward. "On Earth, we call that doing the right thing." More angry voices rose from the crowd. The humans found themselves surrounded by aliens who seemed to think they had committed some terrible crime. Boss raised his forearms for silence. This incident will be reported to the council. Humans, return to your quarters immediately. The council will decide what consequences are appropriate for this breach of diplomatic conduct. As they walked back to their quarters, escorted by station security, the humans were quiet. Finally, Choi Hyejin spoke up. Did we just ruin humanity's chance to join the galaxy? Lee Dae-ho thought about the fear he had seen in the Kef's eyes, and the way the other aliens had reacted when Kim Tae-wook tried to help. Maybe, he said. But some things are more important than politics. Back in their quarters, the team sat around their small table and tried to make sense of what had happened. NG.C. 3 months had passed since the incident in the dining hall. Captain Lee Dae-ho and his team had returned to Earth to report what they had learned about the Galactic Confederation. The news had spread quickly across the planet. Some people were angry about the way aliens treated each other. Others worried that humanity might lose its chance to join the galaxy. Now, Ambassador Yoon Ji-hoo stood in the same council chamber where the humans had first met the galactic leaders. Behind him sat the same 4 crew members from the Harmony. This time they were not just observers. They carried Earth's official answer to the Confederation's invitation. Supreme Coordinator Vex looked down at the small human delegation with what might have been amusement. Ambassador Yoon, we trust that Earth has had time to consider its position. The unfortunate incident 3 months ago was clearly a misunderstanding. Young species often struggle with galactic customs. Yoon Ji-hoo stood up slowly. He was older than Captain Lee Dae-ho, with gray hair and kind eyes that had seen many difficult negotiations. Coordinator Vex, Earth has indeed considered its position very carefully. Around the chamber, hundreds of alien representatives waited to hear humanity's decision. Many seemed bored, as if this was just another routine matter. A few looked curious about what the newcomers would say. We are prepared to welcome humanity into the Confederation, Vex continued. Your species shows promise, despite its emotional nature. With proper guidance, humans could contribute to galactic prosperity. Yoon Ji-hoo nodded politely. We appreciate the Confederation's generous offer. However, Earth has one simple condition for membership. The chamber grew quieter. Several aliens exchanged glances. In 3,000 years of Confederation history, new species always accepted membership gratefully. They never made demands. A condition? Vex's voice carried a note of surprise. What condition could a developing species possibly have? Ambassador Yoon Ji-hoo looked around the chamber. His eyes found the few Kef who were cleaning the floors and maintaining equipment. They kept their heads down, trying to stay invisible. We demand that the Kef people be given full citizenship and equal rights within the Confederation. The silence that followed was complete. For several seconds no one moved or spoke. Then the chamber erupted in noise. Aliens turned to each other, their voices rising in disbelief and anger. Impossible, shouted Delegate Seth, the same Vorthon who had struck the Kef months earlier. The Kef have been servants for 3,000 years. It is the natural order. They are not capable of self-governance, added another voice. They need protection and guidance. Vex raised his arms for silence. When the noise died down, he stared at the human ambassador with cold eyes. Ambassador Yoon, surely you cannot be serious. The Kef are a protected species. They are cared for by their patron species according to ancient agreements. Ancient agreements they never signed, Dr. Park So-min said quietly, but her voice carried in the silence. Yoon Ji-hoo continued as if the interruption had not happened. Earth has studied the history of the Kef people. We have learned that they once had their own cities, their own government, their own spaceships. They were conquered and enslaved 3,000 years ago. The Confederation has simply continued that slavery under a prettier name. That is enough. Vex's voice boomed across the chamber. You dare come here and insult our civilization? The Confederation has maintained peace and order for millennia. Peace for who? Lieutenant Kim Tae-wook stood up. I've spent 3 months watching the security footage from this station. I've seen Kef workers beaten, denied food, forced to work 18-hour shifts. You call that peace? Engineer Choi Hee-jin activated her tablet and projected images onto the chamber's main screen. These are technical drawings made by KEF workers in the station's maintenance sections. Look at them. The images showed incredibly complex diagrams of quantum drive systems and antimatter containment fields. The math was so advanced that most Confederation species needed computers to understand it. But these had been drawn by hand, with simple tools. The KEF understand quantum mechanics better than most of your so-called advanced species, Choi Hye-jin continued. They've been fixing your machines and improving your technology for centuries. You just never bothered to notice because you decided they were only good for serving drinks and cleaning floors. More angry voices rose from the alien delegates, but now some sounded worried rather than just insulted. Ambassador Yoon Ji-hoo held up his hand. Earth's position is simple. We will gladly join the Galactic Confederation and contribute to galactic peace and prosperity. But we will not be part of an organization that enslaves intelligent beings. Free the KEF, give them equal representation, and humanity will be your strongest ally. Refuse, and we will find our own path among the stars. Coordinator Vex leaned forward in his seat. You would abandon the chance to join galactic civilization over a species of servants? We would abandon the chance to join galactic slavery, Yoon Ji-hoo replied firmly. On Earth we have a saying, you can judge a society by how it treats its weakest members. By that measure, the Confederation has failed. The chamber erupted in noise again. Some aliens seemed outraged by the humans' words. Others looked thoughtful, as if they were hearing these ideas for the first time. In the back of the chamber, an old KEF named Wisp was slowly pushing a cleaning cart. He had been working in the council chambers for 40 years, listening to thousands of debates and decisions. Never once had anyone spoken about his people as if they mattered. Now he stopped working and stared at the humans with wide, disbelieving eyes. Supreme Coordinator Vex stood up to his full, intimidating height. The Confederation does not negotiate with ultimatums, especially from species barely out of their own solar system. If humanity cannot accept galactic reality, then perhaps humanity is not ready for galactic citizenship. Perhaps the galaxy is not ready for humanity, Captain Lee Dae-ho said quietly, but his words reached every corner of the chamber. Ambassador Yoon Ji-hoo gathered his papers. Earth's position is final. We will return to our ship and wait 48 hours for your decision. Free the KEF, or we leave. As the human delegation prepared to go, Old Wisp did something that shocked every being in the chamber. He abandoned his cleaning cart and walked directly up to Ambassador Yoon Ji-hoo. Sir, he said in his small, careful voice. Is it true? Do you really think my people deserve to be free? The chamber fell silent again. Every alien stared at the small gray creature who had dared to speak without permission. Yoon Ji-hoo knelt down so he was at eye level with Wisp. I think your people deserve the same rights as every other intelligent species in the galaxy. I think you deserve to choose your own leaders, your own homes, your own futures. Wisp's large eyes filled with tears. No one has ever said such things before. Then it's time someone did, Yoon Ji-hoo replied gently. Security guards moved forward to remove Wisp, but Lieutenant Kim Tae-wook stepped between them and the old KEF. He's done nothing wrong. He just asked a question. The KEF do not speak in council chambers, Delegate Seth hissed. Why not? Dr. Park So-min asked. This is supposed to be a democracy, isn't it? Don't all citizens have the right to speak? They are not citizens, several aliens shouted at once. Exactly our point, Ambassador Yoon Ji-hoo said calmly. He helped Wisp to his feet. Thank you for your courage, friend. What's your name? I am called Wisp, sir. I speak for many of my people who cannot speak for themselves. Yoon Ji-hoo looked around the chamber at all the angry alien faces. Then speak, Wisp. Tell them what your people want. Old Wisp trembled, but he stood as straight as he could. His voice was quiet but clear. We want to learn. We want to build. We want to choose our own work and our own homes. We want our children to grow up free. He paused, looking directly at Supreme. Coordinator Vex, we want to be people, not property. The silence that followed was different from before. This time it was not the silence of shock or anger. It was the silence of beings confronting an uncomfortable truth. Finally, Vex spoke. This discussion is over. The Confederation's position is final. The natural order will not be changed to satisfy human emotions. Ambassador Yoon Ji-hoo bowed politely. Then Earth's position is also final. We choose our friends over your alliance. As the humans left the chamber, Old Wisp walked beside them until security guards blocked his path. But he had heard enough. For the first time in his long life, he had hope. That night, word spread through the KEF quarters of Nexus Prime like wildfire. The humans had spoken for them. The humans had called them people, not property. The humans had offered them something that had seemed impossible: freedom. In his small room on the human ship, Ambassador Yoon Ji-hoo sat with his team and planned their next move. They had 48 hours before the Confederation's deadline. 48 hours to decide humanity's future. Do you think we made the right choice? And Captain Lee Dae-ho asked. Yoon Ji-hoo looked out at the stars beyond Nexus Prime. Somewhere out there were billions of KEF and other oppressed beings, dreaming of freedom they had never imagined possible. Captain Bae Min-ho checked his ship's sensors one more time. The cargo vessel Freedom looked old and slow from the outside, but hidden inside were the fastest engines Earth could build. Around him, 4 other ships waited in the darkness between stars. All of them carried the same secret cargo: KEF families running toward freedom. Captain, his communications officer whispered, "We're getting a message from the Hope. They've picked up the last group from Sector 7. Bae Min-ho nodded. "Tell all ships to jump to hyperspace in sequence. Same route as always. Through the dead zones where Confederation patrols don't go." 6 months had passed since humanity walked away from the Galactic Confederation. Earth had kept its promise to help any KEF who wanted freedom. What started with 17 families had grown into something much larger. Now, hundreds of KEF were making dangerous journeys across the galaxy to reach human space. The rescue missions were secret and dangerous. The Confederation had declared human species trafficking illegal. They sent warships to hunt down the rescue fleet. But Captain Bae Min-ho and his crews had learned to be clever. They used old trade routes that most aliens had forgotten. They hid in asteroid fields and empty space. They moved fast and stayed quiet. On Earth, the rescued KEF were learning what freedom meant. Dr. Nam Yoon-ji worked with families who had been separated for years by their forced labor assignments. Many parents had not seen their children in decades. Some KEF had forgotten their own language and customs after generations of slavery. "It breaks my heart," Dr. Nam told her colleague one day. "Yesterday, I met a KEF grandmother who didn't know her own people had music. She thought only important species were allowed to sing. But the KEF learned quickly. A young KEF named Gleam had become the first of his species to pilot a human spacecraft. He worked alongside human engineers, his quick mind solving problems that stumped even experienced crews. Gleam understands quantum navigation better than pilots with 20 years of experience," Engineer Choi Haijin reported to Earth Command. "The KEF don't just learn our technology, they improve it." The rescue operations grew bolder as word spread through KEF communities across the galaxy. Wisp, the old KEF who had spoken in the council chambers, had become a secret messenger. He carried coded messages between KEF workers on different stations, telling them how to contact the human rescue ships. But success brought new dangers. The Confederation's military arm, known as the Hegemony, had grown tired of chasing individual rescue ships. They wanted to end the human problem once and for all. Admiral Vask of the Hegemony stood before a holographic map showing human ship movements. "These humans think they can steal our property and mock our authority. It's time to teach them the price of defying galactic order." His aide, a nervous bird-like alien, spoke carefully. "Sir, some council members are concerned about attacking humans directly. It might create political problems." "The council talks too much," Vask growled. "The humans have made themselves criminals. We have every right to stop criminals." The trap was set at a KEF colony on the edge of Confederation space. The planet Kepler 442b was home to nearly 10,000 KEF who worked in the system's mining. Operations. Intelligence reports suggested that the entire colony wanted to escape to human space. Captain Bei Minho studied the mission briefing with growing worry. "It's too big," he told his fleet commanders during their encrypted meeting. "We've never tried to evacuate an entire planet before." "The Kef have been planning this for months," replied Captain Song Hayrim of the Liberty. "They've been secretly preparing supplies and organizing transportation schedules. They're ready to go." "It feels like a trap," said Captain Park Dongwoo of the Justice. "The hegemony has been too quiet lately." Bei Minho knew his friend was probably right, but he also knew they couldn't abandon 10,000 beings who were counting on them. "We go in fast, load as many as we can, and get out faster. If it is a trap, we'll deal with it." The rescue fleet arrived at Kepler 442b in the middle of the planet's night cycle. The Kef had done their part perfectly. Thousands of families waited at the designated pickup points with small bags containing their few possessions. They moved quietly through the darkness, children holding tightly to their parents' hands. Young Gleam piloted one of the shuttlecraft, ferrying Kef families from the surface to the waiting ships. His quick reflexes and understanding of the planet's tricky weather patterns made him the most efficient pilot in the fleet. "Another 50 aboard the Freedom," he reported over the radio. "That makes 800 total. We're about halfway done." Dr. Nam Yunji worked aboard the medical ship Mercy, treating Kef who had been injured in the mining operations. Some were missing fingers from industrial accidents. Others showed signs of malnutrition. All of them looked at the human medical staff with wonder, as if they couldn't believe someone actually wanted to help them heal. "Thank you," an elderly Kef whispered as Dr. Nam bandaged his damaged hand. "I never thought I would live to see freedom." "You're free now," she replied gently. "No one will ever own you again." The evacuation had been running for 6 hours when the hegemony fleet appeared. Dozens of warships dropped out of hyperspace around the planet, surrounding the human rescue ships. "This is Admiral Vask of the Hegemony First Fleet," came the threatening voice over all communication channels. "Human vessels, you are engaged in illegal species trafficking. Surrender immediately or be destroyed." Captain Bei Minho felt his stomach drop, but his voice stayed calm. "All ships, Emergency Protocol 7. Get those shuttles back up here. Now." The human ships began moving immediately. They had practiced this scenario many times, but never with so many Kef still on the surface waiting for rescue. "Sir," his weapons officer reported, "they've got us surrounded. 24 ships, all bigger than anything in our fleet." "Can we run?" Bei Minho asked. "Not with the shuttles still in atmosphere. They're too slow to escape." Young Gleam's voice crackled over the radio from his shuttle. "Captain, I have an idea. Kef know this planet better than any alien. The weather patterns, the electromagnetic storms, we can use them to hide." "Explain," Bei Minho said quickly. "Big storm coming from the south. If we fly into it, their sensors won't be able to track us. It's dangerous, but Kef have been flying in these storms for years." It was a desperate plan, but they were out of options. "All shuttles follow Gleam's lead. Use the storm as cover." The hegemony ships began firing as the shuttles raced toward the approaching storm. Energy beams lit up the planet's atmosphere. But the small human craft were fast, and their Kef pilots knew exactly where to fly. In space above the planet, the rescue ships fought a running battle with the hegemony fleet. The human ships were smaller and faster, but they were badly outnumbered. "Hull breach on Deck 3, someone shouted aboard the Freedom. "Engine damage on the Justice," reported another voice. Just when it seemed like the rescue fleet would be destroyed, something unexpected happened. Ships from other species began arriving in the system. Not Confederation ships. These were vessels from species that had heard about humanity's stand for the Kef. "This is Captain Zell of the Aquarian Defense Force," came a new voice. "We stand with the humans." "Crystalline fleet joining the battle," announced another captain. "The strong must protect the weak." What had begun as a trap for the human rescue fleet became the first battle of a much larger war. Species that had been silent for centuries were finally finding the courage to speak up for freedom. The battle lasted 3 hours. When it was over, most of the Kef had been successfully evacuated from Kepler 442b. The hegemony fleet retreated, but Admiral Vask's final message was ominous. "This is just the beginning, humans. You have started something you cannot finish. The rescue fleet limped toward human space with thousands of new refugees. Captain Bei Minho received an encrypted message from Earth. Similar uprisings were beginning across the galaxy. Oppressed species everywhere were demanding their freedom. Young Gleam sat beside him on the bridge, still wearing his pilot's uniform. Sir, my people want to fight alongside yours. We're tired of running. We want to help others escape like we did. Bei Minho looked at the brave young being who had risked everything to save his people. Are you sure? This war is just beginning. It's going to get much worse before it gets better. Gleam's large eyes were filled with determination. Captain, for 3,000 years my people lived as slaves. We cleaned floors and served food while dreaming of freedom. Now humans have shown us that freedom is possible. We will fight for it no matter the cost. Outside the ship's windows, the stars seemed brighter than usual. Somewhere among them, billions of oppressed beings were learning that they didn't have to accept injustice. They didn't have to live as slaves. The underground railroad among the stars had become something bigger. It had become a revolution. Admiral Park Sung-woo stood in Earth's military command center, watching reports flood in from across the galaxy. Red dots on the massive star map showed conflicts breaking out on hundreds of worlds. What had started as humanity's rescue of the HFY had become the largest civil rights movement in galactic history. Sir, we're getting another request for military aid, reported Colonel Lee Bora. The kelp people on Oceana Prime are fighting for independence. They're asking for weapons and training. Park Sung-woo rubbed his tired eyes. The kelp were aquatic beings who had been forced to farm underwater crops for the Confederation for over 1,000 years. Now they wanted freedom, just like the HFY. What about our own defenses? He asked. Still not enough, Colonel Lee replied, honestly. Intelligence reports say the hegemony is building the largest war fleet in galactic history. They want to crush Earth and make an example of us. The Admiral looked at the tactical display showing Earth's solar system. Human shipyards were working day and night to build new vessels, but they were still badly outnumbered. Earth's only advantage was that they weren't fighting alone anymore. In the corner of the command center, a small gray figure worked at a computer terminal. HFY strategist Dawn had become one of Earth's most important military advisors. Her understanding of quantum warfare tactics had amazed even Earth's best generals. Dawn, what's your analysis of the hegemony's battle plan? Admiral Park asked. Dawn looked up from her work. Like all HFY, she was small and soft-looking, but her large eyes held sharp intelligence. They plan to attack Earth directly, sir. They think if they destroy humanity's homeworld, all the rebellions will collapse. Will they? Colonel Lee asked. Dawn was quiet for a moment, thinking. On my old world, we had a saying. You cannot kill an idea by killing the person who speaks it. The idea of freedom has spread too far now. Even if Earth falls, others will continue the fight. Admiral Park nodded grimly. Let's make sure Earth doesn't fall. What do you recommend? Dawn activated a holographic display showing the solar system. The hegemony expects us to meet them in space with our ships, but humans taught us that sometimes the best defense is not what your enemy expects. She highlighted several areas around Earth and its moon. HFY workers built most of the defensive systems on Confederation worlds. We know their weaknesses. If we modify Earth's defenses with HFY engineering, we can create surprises they won't be ready for. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, the rebellion was spreading faster than anyone had imagined. On the mining world of Titan 7, the silicon-based rock people had stopped working. Their leaders declared they would no longer be treated as living tools. Energy World Plasma Station, the energy beings called Sparks had taken control of the power plants that fed half the Confederation. Their message was simple. No freedom, no power. In the underwater cities of Aquaria, the kelp people had declared independence and formed their own government. They sent a message to Earth. Thank you for showing us courage. Now we show ourselves. But the Confederation was not giving up without a fight. The hegemony had convinced many species that the rebellions would destroy galactic civilization. Fear and anger were spreading just as fast as hope. On Nexus Prime, Supreme Coordinator Vex addressed an emergency session of the Galactic Council. "The human virus is spreading across our galaxy," he declared. "If we do not stop it now, everything we have built will collapse into chaos." Many aliens in the chamber nodded agreement. They had lived with the old system for so long that they couldn't imagine anything else working. "The humans and their allies must be crushed," continued Admiral Vask, who stood beside Vex. "We will start with Earth. Once humanity is destroyed, the other rebels will surrender." But not all the council members agreed. Delegate Tren of the Crystalline Empire stood up slowly. "Perhaps it is time to ask ourselves why so many species want to rebel. Are we really providing protection, or are we simply benefiting from oppression?" Angry voices shouted Tren down, but other delegates looked thoughtful. For the first time in centuries, the Galactic Council was truly divided. Back on Earth, preparations for the coming battle continued day and night. Human and Kef engineers worked together to build new types of weapons and defenses. The cooperation between the species had produced innovations neither could have achieved alone. Young Gleam, now a squadron leader in Earth's defense fleet, was training other Kef pilots in advanced combat maneuvers. "Remember," he told his students, "we're not just fighting for ourselves. We're fighting for every oppressed being in the galaxy." Dr. Nam Yunji had converted her medical facilities to treat wounded refugees from across the galaxy. Rock people with cracked mineral shells lay next to injured kelp with damaged gills. Energy beings flickered weakly in special containment fields while they healed. "I never imagined I'd be treating so many different species," she told her medical team. "But pain is the same for everyone, so is the desire to be free." The refugees weren't just victims. Many had become valuable allies. Rock people engineers helped strengthen Earth's asteroid defenses. Kelp strategists shared their knowledge of underwater warfare. Energy beings offered to power Earth's weapons during the coming battle. 3 weeks before the hegemony fleet was scheduled to arrive, Earth received an unexpected visitor. A small, unmarked ship requested permission to land. When it opened, Old Wisp stepped out, along with a dozen other Kef. Captain Lee Dae-ho met them at the landing pad. "Wisp, how did you get here? I thought you were still on Nexus Prime." The old Kef smiled sadly. "I was until yesterday. The hegemony has started arresting any Kef who might be loyal to humans. They plan to execute us as an example." "Then you're staying here," Lee Dae-ho said immediately. "No," Wisp replied firmly. "We came to help fight. My people on Nexus Prime are planning something that will help Earth when the battle begins." "What kind of something?" Wisp's large eyes gleamed with determination. "The Confederation's entire communications network runs through Nexus Prime. Kef workers maintain all the quantum relay stations. If those stations were to malfunction during a battle," Lee Dae-ho understood immediately, "the hegemony fleet would lose coordination with their command center, and with each other," Wisp added. "It would be very unfortunate if such technical difficulties occurred at exactly the wrong time." As the days passed, more ships arrived from around the galaxy. Not all of them carried refugees. Some brought volunteers who wanted to fight alongside humanity. The Crystalline Empire sent a small but powerful fleet. Several independent trader species offered their services. Even some individual ships from Confederation species arrived secretly, their crews no longer willing to support oppression. Admiral Park Sung-woo watched the growing fleet with mixed emotions. It was inspiring to see so many different beings united for freedom, but he knew it still might not be enough. "The hegemony has over 300 ships," he told his staff during their final planning meeting. "We have 87, and most of ours are smaller." "Numbers aren't everything," Dawn said quietly. "We have something they don't." "What's that?" "We have something worth dying for. They're just fighting to keep their power." The night before the battle, Earth's leaders held a ceremony to honor all the species that had joined them. Representatives from dozens of worlds stood together under Earth's stars, united by their belief in freedom and equality. Ambassador Yoon Ji-hoo spoke to the gathered crowd. 6 months ago, we made a simple demand. Don't hurt our friends. Tonight we discover that our friends include everyone who believes that freedom is the right of all intelligent beings. Young Gleam stood with his fellow Kef pilots, no longer the scared refugee who had fled his homeworld. Tomorrow we fight not as humans or Kef or any other species, he said. We fight as free beings defending freedom itself. Far across the galaxy, the hegemony fleet prepared for its final jump to Earth. Admiral Vask was confident of victory. His ships outnumbered the defenders, and his weapons were more powerful. But as his fleet entered hyperspace for the last time, technical difficulties began occurring across the Confederation's communication network. On Nexus Prime, Kef workers throughout the station were having accidents with critical systems. Old Wisp watched from a maintenance shaft as quantum relays sparked and failed throughout the communications center. "This is for all the times you hit us," he whispered. "This is for all the years you treated us like property. And this is for the humans who showed us we deserve better." The battle for Earth was about to begin. But thanks to the courage of oppressed beings across the galaxy, the hegemony would face it blind and confused, while Earth's defenders stood united in their cause. The spark that humanity had lit by defending the Kef was now a fire that burned across the stars. Win or lose, the galaxy would never be the same. 2 years had passed since the battle for Earth. President Oh Kyung-soo stood on the observation deck of Unity Station, watching ships from hundreds of different worlds dock at the massive space station. The station floated in neutral space, built by volunteers from dozens of species who wanted to create something new. Today was special. Today, the Alliance of Free Worlds would officially replace the old Galactic Confederation. "President Oh," said his aide, approaching with a tablet full of reports. "The delegates from the Kelp Republic have arrived, so have representatives from the Kef Commonwealth and the Rock People's Federation." Oh Kyung-soo smiled. Those names would have been impossible 2 years ago. Back then, the Kelp, Kef, and Rock People had been servants with no rights. Now they were free nations with their own governments. The battle for Earth had lasted 3 days. When it was over, the hegemony fleet had been defeated but not destroyed. More importantly, the battle had been broadcast across the galaxy, showing every oppressed being that freedom was possible. Admiral Vask had surrendered when his fleet lost communication with their command center, thanks to the Kef sabotage on Nexus Prime. But the real victory came when half his own officers refused to continue fighting. Even within the hegemony, beings were beginning to question whether the old ways were right. "Sir," his aide continued, "Kef Prime Minister Silver is here for the opening ceremony. She wants to speak with you before the formal sessions begin." Oh Kyung-soo nodded. Silver had been one of the first Kef children born free on Earth. Now, at barely 20 years old, she led the newly formed Kef Commonwealth with wisdom that impressed even veteran diplomats. He found her in the memorial garden, standing before a wall covered with names. These were the beings who had died fighting for freedom: humans, Kef, Kelp, Rock People, and dozens of other species. "Prime Minister Silver," he said respectfully. She turned, her large Kef eyes bright with intelligence and sadness. "President Oh, I was reading the names. So many gave their lives so we could be here today. Their sacrifice made this possible," he agreed. "What did you want to discuss?" Silver pointed to a section of the wall where human names were carved. "Some of my people wonder if we can truly be equal partners with humans. You saved us when we couldn't save ourselves. How do we repay such a debt?" Oh Kyung-soo was quiet for a moment. "Prime Minister, do you remember what Ambassador Yoon said 2 years ago? We didn't save you to create a debt. We did it because it was right. Partners don't owe each other for being partners." "But humans could have joined the Confederation," Silver insisted. "You could have had wealth and power. Instead, you chose to help us." "And look what happened," Oh Kyung-soo replied with a smile. "By standing up for what was right, we helped create something better than the Confederation ever was." In the main assembly hall, delegates from over 400 species were gathering. Unlike the old Confederation Council, where only powerful species could speak, every member of the Alliance had an equal voice. Former Supreme Coordinator Vex sat in the section reserved for observers. He was no longer in power, but he had been invited to witness the new government being formed. His expression was unreadable as he watched former slaves and servants take their places as equal partners. Captain Lee Dae-ho, now promoted to admiral, entered the hall with his old crew. Dr. Park So-min had become Earth's chief diplomat. Lieutenant Kim Tae-wook led the Alliance's peacekeeping forces. Engineer Choi Hye-jin had helped design Unity Station itself. Hard to believe it started with you stopping someone from hitting a janitor, So-min said quietly to Kim Tae-wook. He wasn't just a janitor, Kim replied. He was a person who needed help. That's all that mattered. Young Gleam, now Admiral Gleam of the KEF Defense Force, took his seat among the military advisors. Beside him sat Dawn, who had become the Alliance's chief strategist. The small KEF who had once cleaned floors now planned the defense of hundreds of worlds. The ceremony began with a moment of silence for those who had died in the Freedom Wars. Then President Oh Kyung-soo stood to address the assembly. 2 years ago, he began, humanity was invited to join a galaxy ruled by fear and oppression. We said no. We said that any civilization built on the suffering of others was not worth joining. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the assembly. Today, we gather not as conquerors and conquered, not as masters and servants, but as equals. The Alliance of Free Worlds is founded on a simple principle. Every intelligent being has the right to choose their own destiny. In the audience, Old Wisp wiped tears from his eyes. The ancient KEF had lived to see his people go from slaves to equal partners in galactic civilization. Dr. Nam Yoonji, now the Alliance's chief medical officer, stood to present the health accords. No being will be denied medical care because of their species, their wealth, or their status. Pain is the same for everyone. So is the right to heal. The Rock People delegate, whose stone body gleamed under the station's lights, announced the Labor Protection Treaties. No being will be forced to work against their will. All labor will be fairly compensated. All workers will have the right to rest, to learn, and to choose their own paths. One by one, the rights that the Confederation had denied to lesser species became the foundation of the new alliance. The right to education, the right to own property, the right to vote, the right to travel freely between worlds. But the most important moment came when reformed Ambassador Tell stood up. Tell had once been one of humanity's strongest opponents in the old Confederation. Now he spoke for dozens of former Confederation species who wanted to join the Alliance. We were wrong, he said simply. For thousands of years we told ourselves that oppression was order, that slavery was protection, that inequality was natural. The humans showed us the truth. These were lies we told ourselves to justify our cruelty. He looked directly at the human delegation. We cannot undo the past, but we can choose to build a better future. Today, we ask not to be forgiven, but to be allowed to earn forgiveness through our actions. President Oh Kyung-soo stood again. The Alliance welcomes all, beings who believe in freedom and equality. We judge not by past mistakes, but by future choices. As the formal ceremonies continued, children from dozens of species played together in the station's gardens. Human children laughed with young KEF as they chased floating toys through the artificial gravity fields. Rock People youngsters taught Kelp children how to build crystal sculptures. Energy being children flickered and danced with species that had solid bodies. Captain Bae Min-ho, who had led the rescue missions, now commanded the Alliance's humanitarian fleet. His ships no longer sneaked through dark space to rescue slaves. Instead, they carried teachers, doctors, and engineers to help newly free worlds build their own civilizations. Sir, his communications officer reported, we're getting a request from the Zephyr system. They want Alliance membership. Bae Min-ho smiled. The Zephyr system had been one of the Confederation's most oppressive sectors. Set course for Zephyr. Let's welcome our new friends to the Alliance. As the day's ceremonies ended, the leaders gathered for a private dinner. The conversation was relaxed, filled with plans for the future rather than arguments about the past. "What should we call this day?" asked Prime Minister Silver. "The day the alliance was officially formed?" Ambassador Yoon Ji-hoo, now elderly but still sharp, considered the question. "How about the day we chose friendship over power?" Admiral Lee Dae-ho raised his glass. "To friendship, to equality. To the idea that no being should be judged by their size, their species, or their strength, but by their character. To the humans who showed us courage," added Dawn. "To the Kef who showed us wisdom," replied Dr. Park Soman. "To all beings who choose to stand up for what's right," finished President Oh Kyung-soo. Outside the station's windows, the stars shone brightly. Ships from hundreds of worlds moved peacefully through space, their crews working together regardless of species. The galaxy had been transformed not by conquest, but by the simple idea that friendship was stronger than fear. In a small memorial garden on Earth, a statue stood beside a quiet pond. It showed a human and a Kef standing together, looking up at the stars. The inscription read, "In memory of all who chose friendship over power, courage over comfort, and freedom over fear." Children from many worlds came to visit the statue. Human guides would tell them the story of how their galaxy had changed. They would explain that it all began with a simple demand: "Don't touch our friends." The children would ask if the story was really true. Could friendship really change a whole galaxy? The guides would smile and point to the ships in the sky, crewed by dozens of different species working together. They would point to the schools where children of all species learned, side by side. They would point to the hospitals where any being could receive care regardless of who they were.